Right, well, we'll just get started, folks. Great to see so many of you on the call. Thanks for joining us for the first ever SSS Coaching Network meeting. The purpose of this network is to provide support and development for coaches working in student sport in Scotland. We as SSS don't have a huge amount of contact with coaches throughout the year. We want to do more of, and a network that we want to be able to support a bit better. This coaching network came out of a call we had last year around mental health, and we were asked what we do to support coaches in dealing with and working with students that might have mental health problems, and at the time our response was, well, we don't do too much, but it's definitely something we can do more of. So thanks for everyone that contributed to the surveys that we sent out earlier this year, to get some feedback on what would actually help and what would support coaches. And here we are today. We've got a really good session coming up, and it's the first of a few sessions throughout the year. So hopefully you stick with us. We've got some sessions planned for later in the year, and it's always going to be about trying to develop you as coaches and work with you as people as well. So we've got a clean sports session first off, and then we've got a coaching young people session from Andy Goldie from the Dundee United Academy, and there'll be an opportunity to do a bit of networking between you all, to get to know each other and get to understand everyone's different backgrounds in sport, and there's loads of experience on the call. I'm finally catching up with the chat, so yeah, great to see so many. Gymnastics, archery, football, so we've got basketball, brilliant. I noticed Colin's joined us for futsal, karate, brilliant, basketball again, tennis, yeah, so loads of different sports. And it's a great opportunity to learn from different sports as to how they interact with students and what the kind of student sports landscape looks like for different sports. But our first session this evening is around clean sport. We've got Sarah Gandon joining us. Sarah is a member of staff at SSS. She leads a Healthy Body, Healthy Mind project in partnership with the Scottish Government. She's also player development manager at the Netball Players Association. And on top of that, she is also a coach, netball coach at Glasgow Uni. So, Gans, thanks for joining us. And I think you've got a presentation for us, and I'll leave you to it.
Thank you very much. I'm going to double check I've got sound share. Yep. So yeah, Neil stole my thunder a little bit in what I was going to cover at the beginning. But my name, hang on, seems to be thinking about something. Can you still see me?
Yes, yeah, we can.
Yeah, cool. I've got the donut of doom, but as long as you can still see me, that's good. My name's Sarah Gandon, and the reason that Neil's asked me to do this session today is mainly because I'm a UK anti-doping national trainer. But before we came on the call, we were both saying that you could get any national trainer to come on and do this session, but if they don't understand university sport, then it's going to have less impact. So hopefully I can get across to you guys how understand a bit more about clean sport can help you in what you guys deliver at the moment. So yeah, currently head coach at Glasgow Uni Netball, SSS project officer for Healthy Body, Healthy Mind. I do some consultancy for Sport Scotland. I work for the Netball Players Association, and previously I've been team manager for England Netball, SSS, Bucks and Team Bath. So a wide variety of things, and sometimes that includes a bit of clean sport. So the session's outcomes today, just going to have a little bit of a think about student athletes. Are they elite or recreational? Talk about strict liability. I'm probably going to assume that people don't know much about clean sport. So if you know loads, you might know some of this, but hopefully we'll be able to give you a bit of extra information that you haven't had before. The structure of clean sport, how to check medication so that if you guys are ever asked, you know you are able to direct people in the right direction. A bit around supplements, a food first approach, and then how to get support or who to contact. So this slide is my first one, which is, are student athletes elite or recreational? This is my squad. They won the Conference Cup last year, or in 2020. 3 players in this photo are in national pathways, so they would all count as elite athletes. When it comes to anti-doping, clean sport can be tested anytime, anywhere. But every other athlete in this photo is still an athlete who could be tested anytime, anywhere. But they are counted now as recreational athletes, and that is a change. So the World Anti-Doping Agency updated their code in 2021 to recognise that some of these players might not be receiving anti-doping education. So if you then turn up and test them and they're playing at a recreational level, do they know they're cheating? How do they know they're cheating? And how can we support them if they are cheating and they didn't realise? So they have now brought in that an athlete caught at this level would be counted as a recreational athlete and receive a 3-month ban instead of a 4-year ban, which is what the 3 in the national pathway would receive. But it means they're treated differently. But to us as coaches, does that really matter? Do we still want them to be aware that being a clean athlete is important? And obviously with my background, I'm going to say yes, but it's for you guys to take that thought back to your own club and see, does it matter that there's a mix? Or can you approach your club in the same way? Because those athletes in the national pathway are not your responsibility to know what clean sport means to them, but you can still embed some cultural things in your own club. So the main principle that UCAD use for clean sport is around 100% me. And we can do that in university clubs and college clubs just as much as you can do it in a national setup. So is it about 100% your effort, your determination, not cutting any corners, not cheating, but also not inadvertently cheating either? How can we as coaches in the network support our athletes to be the best they can be, that is 100% them and nothing else? The message to athletes is around strict liability. So everything that goes into their body is their responsibility. The strict liability is a message that you can share all the time. When I was thinking about this and how it relates to what I do at Glasgow Uni, I had an athlete tell me that she doesn't like to eat in the morning, and could I recommend a shake or something that she could have if we had a 9 o'clock fixture? And my response was, well, you need to take on something, you need to take on fuel, but if you don't feel you can eat, then go down a smoothie route, or go down, have a diluting juice or a drink, or something that's going to give you some energy to be able to compete. And it depends on the level they're competing at, how much energy they actually need, because there's a perception that you need a lot of energy, but I would say some of my players don't really change speed. So therefore, if you're playing in a 4th team, potentially you don't need a huge amount of energy. Half a banana might do you. But everything that goes into your body is your responsibility. So it's us as coaches delivering the message to say it's your body and it's your responsibility, but we'd advise you eat something or have a smoothie if you can't eat. When it comes to clean sport though, everything would be their own responsibility. If anything's found in their system, it's entirely up to them. They can't allocate that responsibility to somebody else, which is always interesting when athletes get to a really, really high level and then start saying, oh, my doctor gave me this. Well, that's all well and good, but everything in their body is their responsibility. So how clean sport is structured is you've got the World Anti-Doping Agency, and they create the World Anti-Doping Code. And then each country, so in the UK, it's UCAD, that is they call it a NADO, so it's a National Agency for Anti-Doping. they look after clean sport in the UK. So I just wanted to show you that that's how it works. Every country will have the equivalent of UCAD. UCAD would argue theirs is the best quality of anyone else's. But yeah, every country will have one. Anti-doping rule violations are what's in the code. So there are 11 rules that can be broken. The top 4 are athlete only ones. So presence is when they test and they find something present in someone's system, but they can also be banned for using, evading or refusing, so that's refusing a test, or whereabouts failures. So that would be your very, very top athletes, which some of you guys might be coaching. Those very top athletes would have to give an hour a day, every day, and say where they're going to be. And if they fail to be in those places 3 times, then they would get a ban. So the bans start at 4 years. So those top 4 are athlete only, but anything below that, any of us as coaches could be banned from sport for doing. Okay, so that includes tampering or attempting to tamper. These red ones are the ones that have been added in 2021. Possession, trafficking or attempting to traffic, administration, aiding and abetting, complicity, so that's being complicit, knowing it's going on and not doing anything about it. Prohibited association is if somebody does receive a ban, we can no longer coach them. No matter whether we think the ban's fair or not, we cannot coach that athlete. Otherwise, we could receive a ban. And then acts by an athlete or other person to discourage or retaliate against reporting to authorities. That's a new one that's been added around. It probably came from all the athletes in Russia, athletes and staff in Russia that had to flee to America for fear of their own lives. There was no rules in the World Anti-Doping Agency to say that people couldn't threaten them. They've added the rule. I still don't know how they're going to stop them, but they've added a rule at least to try and put people off. So that's, again, just a bit of background knowledge for those of you that have never had clean sport education. You may have only thought that the only way to get banned from sport is to test positive with something in your system, and that is only one of the 11 rules that you can break to receive a ban. So checking medication, I really wanted to put this in because I thought I have people around my local area who like to do running, and then all of a sudden they're in a national championships and they're still just a runner that lives locally and doesn't really know what they're doing, and then they're like, oh, am I allowed to take Lemsip? And it's such a basic question. And when I was growing up and I was in a national pathway, we were kind of given a list of things not to take, and actually that's not how it works. So there's a website called Global Draw. It is really, really easy to use. If any of you have got your phone on you just now, please feel free to just have a quick go on it. Go on Global Draw. What you do to begin with is put in your user type. So we would all put coaches in, but an athlete looking it up themselves would put in athlete. Select your sport, because not every sport has the same substances on the banned list. The ones I used to always think of were around alcohol, but I don't think they work anymore. It's things like beta blockers that lower your heart rate would help you in archery, but would not help you in a 100-meter sprint, potentially. Okay, so it's things like that, is what's going to have a performance impact, and that's why WADA put it on the list. So if it's not going to have a performance benefit, it's probably not going to be on your list. So the sports are different, and then the nation of purchase, that's important for people traveling. So if any of you guys ever go abroad with teams, it's really important that you say to teams, take some of your standard medication with you. So if people have allergies, get some allergy medication here in the UK, check it before you go, especially if you end up going to a kind of physio event or a WUGS event or something like that. There might be testers there. When you pop in what it is that you're searching for, try and be as specific as possible. So if you just write Sudafed, you'll get 15 results. But if you write Sudafed night and day capsules, it will come straight up. And then that third screen then shows you if you can have it in competition, out of competition, and as I'm sure you can guess, if it is prohibited and banned, the little box is red instead of green or amber. It might be conditional, so it might be that you're allowed a certain amount of it, or it might be you're allowed it out of competition but not in competition. And the in competition period starts at 11:59 p.m. the day before the competition. But that means that substance needs to be out of your system by that point, or out of the athlete's system. So if you're not sure whether it has left their system or not, that's, I guess you can ask for medical advice and things. And our advice at UCAD is this last screen shows you a unique reference number, and at the bottom you can see it says send to email or view as PDF. We would always advise athletes in particular to save that, so that if something ever does come up, they can say, I've been a clean athlete, I've been checking all my medication. And I thought it was really important to show you guys this, because you may have athletes on their way up through a pathway who've maybe not had education from their governing body yet, but they don't want to rock up at a national finals without checking their medication first. And that gives you a look of how easy and simple it is to look it up really quickly. So checking medication is done in the UK on Global Draw. The other countries it can be done in is the USA, New Zealand, Japan, Australia, and Switzerland. A slightly random bunch of countries, if you ask me. Check medications regularly. That's probably not necessarily for you guys, but if people ask you, make sure you put it in as you're the coach checking. Don't pretend to be them. Make sure you do it as a coach. And just a reminder, this is only for medications. You cannot use it for supplements. Supplements are done on a different system. So that's all on medication. I'm just going to have a quick pause and see if anybody has any questions. No. I'm open to questions at the end as well. Right, so supplements. The message around supplements within UCAD is firstly assess the need, assess the risk, and assess the consequences. And assessing the need is really interesting. I went to a cycling event almost 2 years ago, exactly, and I remember turning up and there's these like 9, 10, 11-year-olds about to cycle around Arthur's Seat twice, stuffing gels up their shorts for their extra energy that they're going to need. And I'm looking at them going, you're 10. How do you need extra energy to cycle around Arthur's Seat twice? Like, it's, I don't know. I probably didn't do it very often, but I don't think it's that hard. Like, it doesn't take you that long to get around Arthur's Seat twice. So we look at the need and go, well, if you're not exerting yourself for more than an hour, is there any need for any supplements? If you're young, is there any need? Are you taking on protein and actually that protein's not really doing anything? Or we're dealing with students, do you need to take a bar of maxi muscle for £3, or could you have a tuna bagel or a peanut butter sandwich or a chicken wrap or something that's got the same amount of protein in it and probably cost you less? There's some really interesting work done on food swaps that we can I'll maybe find some resources and share in the Basecamp group after this, Neil. So yeah, assessing the need first, the risk. So the risk to most of our athletes would be that recreational's 3-month ban. But there's also the health risks. Like, do we know what's in supplements? They aren't as regulated as medication. There is no 100% way of checking a supplement to see whether there's anything in it. The medication checker can check everything because medication is highly regulated. Everybody knows to the gram what's in medication, but supplements can write things like preparatory blend in their ingredients, and they don't need to say what's in them. So it's just a bit interesting. So I've got a video here. I'm just going to pop it up. Watch this. Has anyone heard this story before, Sam Chalmers? Nobody jumping in. Jen kind of nodding, but I can't see everybody. Okay, some of you might have seen this before, but we'll play it and we'll see what you think. Can you hear it?
Started my rugby at Melrose
Yeah,
for the Melrose
volume's
Minis
working.
when I was just coming out of nursery. Played all the way up through the age groups, and then I represented the borders under 16s, 17s, 18s. I played a few sevens tournaments when I was 17, and then moved up to the first team when I was 18 years old when I made my debut for the first against Peebles. Last year I was involved with the Scotland under 20s, and then the ban happened.
I think the modern day demands of the game are size and bulk, and Sam had been told by a number of coaches that he wasn't big enough. He had to put size on, and so he tried and never really managed it.
I've been getting under pressure to say, oh, people, like, you got skills and stuff, but you just need to put on weight, get bigger. And I just, one day, just thought, I'll take what my friend's taking. I didn't look into it. I didn't think about it. Didn't think what I could do to my body. That's what I was going to do to myself. Like, that's how much I wanted to go to that level. Just, I didn't think about it at all, like the effects that could hurt me. But when you want something so bad, you do anything. There's a supplement called Pro SD, but I actually ordered online. It's only £27. It comes to your front door. I was taking it for a week. That was only a week. That order was the worst mistake of my life.
Sam was diabetic. It was affecting his body, and he stopped taking it. And if he had kept taking it, then it might affect him quite severely physically.
My name was called out. Things were going through my mind. I wasn't sure if it was a banned substance or what was actually in it. Is it legal? Is it clean? I was so nervous. I remember it well. I was at the rugby club. I was just going to the gym and got a voicemail off Richard McGee from the Scottish Rugby Union, who deals with this kind of stuff. And he was like, "You've failed the doping test. You need to get back to me urgently. This is a very serious matter." And I remember his exact words. I went upstairs in the change room and just lost it. Something that's going to get taken away from you. It's your life. It's just nuts. I can't really explain it that well. I just broke down.
It was a real shock getting a phone call from Sam. It was obviously something serious that he wanted to tell me, and I hoped that it was going to come to nothing, but it didn't, and he's living with the consequences.
From the start, I just knew I'd tell the truth. That's what I was going to do. I couldn't live with myself. I'm quite an honest guy. The IRB and the World Anti-Doping Agency, they were good with me. They said that's all you can do. But these things, black or white, you fail a drugs test, you get a ban, and I suppose that's what it has to be. People can't take drugs in sport.
This was a year for him to be involved in the Scotland under-20s. Hopefully it'll be a real opportunity for him to be involved in that this year and get a start in place. But he's missing out on that because of his stupidity, naivety, whatever you want to call it.
Tuesday, Thursday night, when I'm in the house watching TV, when out there training, no matter what the weather is, it was snowing, rain, hail, you just want to be out there. It's just, you don't realise how much you miss something when you actually lose, until you lose it. And that's kind of how I feel at the moment.
Being sort of isolated, having to train on your own, you can't train with the team, you can't do weights with the team. You've got to do it individually, which is tough. The be-all and end-all is not to be big and massive, bulky. I think be able to do the basic skills really, really well. Be able to pass with your left and right hand and kick with your left and right foot and tackle, and doing all these basic things are far more important than having massive bulging biceps.
Hard work just beats everything. There's no shortcuts in rugby. All the players that have gone pro have worked hard and they've made it to the next level. I cheated. I took the easy option. You just can't do it because it'll come back to bite you.
So in terms of watching that the reason I wanted to show that video, I show that to athletes quite a lot, and I hope that it hits hard to athletes. But when I was watching it with my coach's eyes on, I was like, his dad was an international rugby player and he still managed to make a really big mistake. So how many coaches or people that he could have been around could have influenced him in a more positive way to make that not happen? And maybe it would have been that one coach at the club that had overheard other boys saying to him, have you thought about taking this? That went, don't be stupid, don't take that, or don't take anything, or had a conversation with him. And I think there's a really big thing with us as coaches to be confident, to check and challenge, and not shy away from the fact that if you've got a supplement culture in your club, then challenge it and find out why, and find out what it is people are taking, why they're taking it. I spoke to a judo coach not long ago who said that he banned everybody in his club from taking pre-workout because he didn't have a clue what it was doing. He wasn't an expert. He was just like, I had no clue what it was doing to them. But when they came to the club, they were like fired up and ready to go, and he didn't like it, so he just banned them and was like, nah, you're not coming into my club having taken a pre-workout, whether it's legal or not. It just didn't feel right to him. So I guess when I watch that Sam Chalmers video, I just think there's so many times in that kid's career where somebody could have said something that could have changed his decision, and it could be one of us that was able to do that. I actually delivered education to rugby sevens about 18 months ago, and a few of the guys were friends with Sam, and I said, oh, did he come back after his ban? And they were like, nah, he came along to training a couple of times and then was just didn't want to be there anymore. And it's a real shame because I'm sure he was talented, and he was also in that age group of under 20 that we've got a lot of in university and college clubs. So it's a real opportunity for us to put a positive message out. And I guess there was the other bit of, do you know what your supplement culture is? So have you ever asked, are people hiding it because are they not turning up and showing you that they're taking a supplement, but as soon as they leave training they're taking something? And yeah, it's just going back to that check and challenge and be confident. So when we talk about assessing the need, we talk about looking at an athlete's diet, their sleep, their hydration, psychology, rest, training, physio, and just general advice before taking supplements. So we would advise any pathway or international athlete to check in on all of these points before looking at supplements. So this is again just to give you a bit more confidence. When someone says, oh, I need to take a supplement because I can't eat in the morning, or because it's the quickest way for me to get fuel in when I finish a late training session at night and I need to go to my bed, then talk to them about their diet and when they can eat and how they can take on fuel. Maybe they need to do a big lunch because they've got training late at night, and then they could do with just having a bowl of cereal at night, and it's going to be cheaper and it's going to be really good for them. And again, with athletes that are students, are they getting enough sleep? Like, it might be that you just say to some of the club members, see, the night before a game, could you try and go to bed an hour earlier? Will that help you? Rather than taking a supplement. It's not about changing their lifestyles. We all coach in student clubs, so we know they're going to go out on a Wednesday or a Sunday, or they're going to go out through the week, but can we encourage them to get a bit more sleep, a bit more rest in the day? Some of them probably don't need encouragement for that. And not necessarily, like, psychology is a big word, but are we talking about mental health at training? How are people feeling? Are they feeling tired? Are they feeling stressed? And can we just talk about it? And actually talking about it gets it out there. And sometimes that can be a huge amount of therapy in itself. So this is just to give you some ideas around, if someone says, I need to take a supplement because, here's a few things you could ask them about. I did mention that there is a risk involved with supplements because you can't check them on Global Joe. they can be checked on Informed Sport. But the issue with Informed Sport is that not all banned substances are tested for. It tests for markers. So it doesn't test the full list because the full list is massive. But specific supplement products you can check, and if there's a batch number, then you can check the batch on Informed Sport. Most of the companies that put their stuff on Informed Sport would be sport specific companies. I always go back to Joe Wicks at the moment, because Joe Wicks is like a mass market supplement, and he's not making his supplements for high performing athletes, but he is making them for the mass market. So probably there's some of our students who are like, oh, Joe Wicks, we'll take some of his protein shake because that's what he tells everybody to do, but there's no way of checking it. So a nutritionist once told me that if you use powdered milk, it's got more protein than quite a lot of these like protein shakes and supplements. And actually you could just put a bit of powdered milk in a shake and it's really cheap. It's in like next to the UHT in the supermarket aisle. and you think, oh, if it's just a bit of protein you need, actually you could try that and see if it suits you, and might appeal to students because it's a bit cheaper. So assessing the consequences when athletes receive a ban, they need to show no significant fault or negligence to have it reduced below 2 years. Obviously, if we're talking about some of your recreational athletes, it would be shorter. But if they can show substantial proof that they have been checking things like this, again, this message is really for high performance athletes, but if you have high performance athletes within your program, feel free to ask them, are you checking what you're taking? If you're bringing supplements into the club and you're saying, oh, it's because I'm competing at X level, check with them, are you checking it? Are you making sure? And are you saving all that information? And I think one of the really important consequences is that people's health's on the line. There is a real drive at the moment for the kind of body image stuff. So yeah, we would say have a food first approach. If people are going to take supplements, make it the top of that tree, not the main thing that they're ever eating. Anyone can be tested anywhere, anytime. But if you guys want to see what the process looks like for testing, or you want to share it with your athletes, literally YouTube UCAD testing, and there's this video that's really good. Shows it all in cartoon mode. So the main principles. Excellent. What I didn't say on slide 1 is I'm also a mum, but I did say to Neil that you'll find that out at some point probably. Yeah, so the main principles around clean sport: your body, your responsibility is the message to give to athletes. Recreational athletes are defined as a member of an NGB, but are not competing at an international or national level. I've showed you how to check medications, talked a little bit about supplement culture, and then anyone can be tested anywhere at any time. If you want to learn more, there are courses on UCAD's website, which are the Clean Advisor course, and there's a Clean Coach course as well. And there is also an app, which is pretty good, that you can download where you can get any information. I think I've run over, so apologies, Neil. Only just realised that. But
that's all good.
If you have any questions, let me know.
Cheers, Sarah. Thanks for that. Really good, and it just shows that you know, at whatever level that we're all coaching at, it's something that's really important and definitely relevant to everyone in coaching and student sport. What we're going to do just now is just give you guys the opportunity to discuss that with each other. So we're just going to pop you into breakout rooms for 5 minutes, and we want you to, well, of course, introduce yourself to each other, but also answer the question that I put in the chat. So, what is my role in clean sport? And just take 5 minutes to just discuss that between you, and then come back and we'll move on to the next section. So I'll just open all the rooms and we'll see you in 5 minutes. Hopefully that's going to work. That's all right. That was good, Gans.
Oh, I didn't realise.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Hope it's been good to just say hello to a few new faces, and I'm sure there's maybe a few faces that you know already. What I would ask you to do is, if you can put into the chat just now, if you've got any initial thoughts on anything that you discussed, if you've got any questions that have come from your chats, then feel free to put that into the chat. We'll keep a note of that, and we'll see if we can answer some of those questions later on. And Gans will maybe post a link to any kind of key information websites for that. But we'll move on to our next session, and we're joined by Andy Goldie, who's Academy Director at Dundee United. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
Thank you very much for the invite.
Great to have you. And I know there is at least one United fan on the call, so if there's any questions, try and keep them relevant. I'm looking at Ben Graham over there, so that's fine. Yeah, used to work with the Scottish FA and have worked with Hamilton as well. Interesting, we've timed this really well with the Scotland squad getting announced this afternoon. And we've got a couple of guys in the squad that used to be at United, one that came through the pathway there, and there's also a couple of guys that have come through the school's performance schools pathway. So we've timed that really well, so we're quite chuffed with ourselves on that one. But there's definitely a bit of credit you can take with some of those guys in the squad. But you're here to talk to us about coaching young people. You've got a presentation for us, so hand it over to yourself, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll get through as many as we can. So Andy, feel free to take the floor.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Neil, and thank you for everyone who's logged on. Hopefully I can provide you with some insight into how we operate, what our methodology is in coaching and developing young people, because I think that's important as well, and hopefully you get that message throughout the presentation. It's not just about coaching young athletes, it's about coaching young people and developing them as people as well. So I think the best place to start, and a lot of you have seen this quote before, is you have to make the kids understand how much you care about them. So they won't care one iota of the information, the knowledge, the experience, your background whatsoever, unless you can show them that you really care about them as a human being and as a young person first and foremost. And if you can build that connection with a young person, then you've got your route in, you've got your connection with the player. And from that point on, they'll believe and they'll buy into anything that you'll say. So I think that's the key point for any coach of any level, whether it's at elite level, whether it's at recreational level. You have to make these young people care or understand that you care about them first and foremost as a person before the athlete. I'm going to discuss a couple of different subjects in developing young people, developing young athletes. The first one is around the ages and stages of development. Now, the graphic that you can see on the screen just now is the linear journey that far too many coaches, far too many young players or young athletes believe that's what it looks like, because they see the glitz and the glam on social media. They see Lionel Messi signing billions of pounds worth of contracts, whether it's in marketing or whether it's his actual playing contract. And they just believe that this is the path, that they're born, and they just continuously get better and better as it goes on. As we know through our own life experience, that doesn't relate to sport, but it doesn't relate to life as well. And it looks a wee bit more like that in what we call the messy middle. So to get to this top area and achieve your maximum potential, you have to go through this messy middle period. And within that messy middle period, you've got loads of things, and especially young kids, whether it's issues with their education, the stresses of education, the exam periods, whether it's the PHV, the peak height velocity, which is their biggest growth spurt during their adolescent years, whether it's social issues, girlfriends, whether it's seeing their pals make poor decisions socially, whether it's diet, nutrition, drink, possibly even drugs, loss of form. Again, these things can happen with even the best young talent we have. Diet, sleep, puberty, and so many more things that can challenge a young kid. And this is what we say, this is what makes and breaks a young player. This is what determines the level they get to. How they respond to each of these setbacks, how they respond to each of these challenges, ultimately will determine how high this arrow goes here and what success they go on to achieve. Of course, they need opportunity. Of course, they need to have a bit of luck in that as well. But we truly believe that how you respond to this messy middle period is ultimately going to help either make you or break you, in the words of sport. How we look at this, so we're aware of it, we understand it, we've seen it so many times. I've now been involved in academy football for the last 15, 16 years in various different roles. I've had the privilege of working with some of Scotland's very best young talent, and I've had the privilege and the learning experience of working with young players who have looked as if they could be exceptional but haven't achieved their maximum potential. So looking into the research that was out there, we came across the pit of success. Now, this shows you or gives you an overview of what I was just discussing there about how they come through that messy middle period. So you get the kids who are capable, they're comfortable, they're confident, but ultimately, if they're not challenged, and if you don't meet that level of challenge with their ability, then they quickly become bored. Their excitement drains out of them. They become a bit confused because they don't see the progress and the opportunity. And ultimately, that then goes into this horrible pit where they become a bit overwhelmed, stressed, frustrated. And this is also giving them challenges that they maybe can't achieve yet as well. So it's so important that we get it right for each individual kid, that you meet the challenges and the opportunity with exactly what they require at that moment in time. So not pushing them too early, but making sure that you're not holding them back too long as well. If you can match that, these new and difficult challenges, then you can have a lot more improvement, you get a lot happier players, and ultimately, if they can come through that, you've got a new higher level of ability in a young player as well. This is the model that we use. So we always look at comfort v stretch as our terminology. It's great that we have young players who feel safe and in control. That is always the bare minimum we expect of every player. But we ultimately, to develop international players, and our vision is to develop players that play in the top 5 leagues in Europe, play international football and play Champions League football. If we keep them in here and they're just comfortable all the time, they're never, ever, ever going to go and achieve their maximum potential. So it's important that we do stress them, that we do stretch them, that we do provide them new challenges with new experiences, with things that they've never experienced before, whether it's playing against opposition from different cultural backgrounds and different countries, whether it's flying to a different country to play opposition, whether not with their parents, whether it's been in new routines, whether it's playing up an age group, whether it's playing down an age group. It's important that we do take them through these other zones to ultimately make this growth zone a lot bigger. And if they can come through these 3 different zones, ultimately their comfort zone becomes a lot bigger as well. So the higher level they achieve, the comfort zone becomes a lot bigger. Therefore, they're more comfortable within an elite environment at that point. So again, it's very difficult for us to assess where each individual is within the challenges that are required within their age and stage of development. But again, through experience, through the data that we collect, through player reviews, through analysis, that all the information that we collate, we hope that we can make a more informed decision on each individual player. So yeah, I've mentioned it already a few times. Big problem in Scottish football, and it's still a problem, is we focus on winning games and we're focusing on developing a group or a team. It can't happen. It can't happen. We've done it for so long in the past, and it's just not produced the results. Neil mentioned earlier on the Scottish FA Performance Programme. They focus on the individual player. They don't have a game at the weekend. They go and train with their clubs and play with their clubs at the weekend. But during the week, the focus is solely on the individual. And I've taken that mantra from a previous role with the Scottish FA, and it's very much one that we adopt within our academy programme at the moment. We're never going to develop teams of 15, 16 players every single year who are going to achieve our vision and ultimately achieve a professional career in the game. But what we can do is we can really focus on each individual player and maximising their full potential so that they achieve whatever level of success that they have in the future. And success will be determined on various levels depending on the individual. So how do we go about that? So every player in our academy has an individual development plan, which is tailored towards who they are, first and foremost, not who they're not. So we focus very much on their strengths. We focus very much on their identity as a player. We don't try and change that. We don't, if we've got a dribbler, we're not trying to make him a better passer. We're trying to make him a better dribbler because we want our young players to have super strengths. We don't want to constantly work on the things that they can't do and they're not so good at. Because if we do that, ultimately, we're going to end up with an average player like we have for so many years in Scottish football. We want to focus on those strengths to make sure that they have 3 or 4 different things that are real world class. Now, of course, we're not going to achieve that for every single player, but our aim is to make sure that every player leaves our academy, whether it's after 1 year or 10 years, they leave having 1, 2, 3 different things that make them a unique individual. So we really, really work hard in developing their identity as a player rather than what we see as an ideal player profile. The players take ownership of their short-term goals, which is a big theme for us, and accountability I'll mention later on. And we always ask them to dream big. We never put a ceiling on what any of our young players can achieve. We want them to dream big. We want them to go out there every training session or kicking a ball out with their pals or every game, acting out who their role model is. So why should we ever tell a kid that he can't achieve something? It's our responsibility to match that kid's ambition with the appropriate level of service and support from our coaching staff and other support staff within the club. So we encourage our kids to dream big. Of course, we're realistic. Of course, we don't promise that every kid is going to achieve what's in this cloud, what's in this bubble here. But we do our very, very best to make sure that we can maximise their potential and get as close to this as possible. Ultimately, if they fall short, they're still going to be a much better person and a much better player than they would have been if they hadn't been encouraged to dream big. Biggest part of our culture is promoting and developing accountability. We can provide all the service, all the support, all the opportunity, all the expertise, all the science, all the research to every single player, and they still might not make it. Looking at, particularly in the performance school journey, the one thing that stood out between Billy Gilmore and Nathan Patterson as an example, obviously in the A squad, and others who didn't quite make that level, was the ability to take on the responsibility for their development. So the first question they asked was, what can I do better? It wasn't a case of he doesn't pass me the ball or the coach doesn't like me or any other excuse. It was always, what can I do better? How can I improve? What do I need to do more of? What do I need to cut out? What changes do I need to make? And these are the questions that our coaches will frequently ask our young players to promote and develop accountability within each player. Ultimately, we can take the horse to the water, but we can't make them drink it. So they need to take accountability for their own development and therefore performance as well. I mentioned this right at the very start. We understand that Plan A isn't always going to come to fruition. Therefore, Plan B must be to make sure that any player that leaves our academy leaves with a multidisciplinary skill set that is transferable to any other career choice that they make. So we work on character development, we work on personality, we work on life skills, we work on presentation skills, we work on a series of different skill sets that allow them to change direction at any point when the football journey may not be kind of finishing where they want it to be as well. Celebrate the journey. We don't just celebrate the outcome. We very much celebrate the journey. So the short-term wins, the achievements, even things like under 11s or under 12s, under 13s, whatever age group going on team days out. These are all things that they wouldn't have got anywhere else. So they're creating new friendships, they're having new experiences, and ultimately that is so much more important than the very end goal. If we just focus on the very end goal of becoming a professional footballer or not becoming a professional footballer, ultimately we're going to fail as a club, we're going to fail as an academy. We have to celebrate the journey and really make sure that our kids leave our programme having had the best experience they possibly can. And that's our mantra. That is a quote I say to parents, players, coaches, staff, that our biggest driver is to make sure that for these young people, we are creating memories that last longer than any career in football. We take our kids to tournaments, we have academy awards nights, we have days out, we have a school programme. These are all lifelong memories, creating shared experiences, shared opportunities that these kids will remember, hopefully, for the rest of their lives, not just maybe till they're 35, 36, 37 when they retire from football. Creating development pathways is very difficult because, again, going back to accountability, a lot of our players have to create their own pathway. We work slightly differently here at Dundee United. We don't take big numbers. We sign a maximum of 12 at any one age group, and that is to allow us to maximise the resource that we do have to work closely with smaller numbers and therefore individual players. So our coach to player ratio is a lot smaller. If you look at the success of Scottish sport, even in the last 10 years, a lot of it is coming from individual sports, whether it is swimming, whether it is golf, whatever it may be, athletics. There's no coincidence that the coach to player ratio and the focus on the individual athlete and the individual person has a big part to play in that. So we are trying to replicate that within a team sport, that we have an individual specific coach and a position specific coach, the only club in Scotland that have those roles, or at least one of those roles. And we really drive into the individual opportunity of each player. That then creates, because you only have 12 players at each age group, that then creates an opportunity to give our players different experiences, different challenges. So some of our players play a year up, occasionally they play 2 years up. We've had players play 3 years up as well. We don't expect them to go out there and score a hat-trick and be the best player on the pitch, but it provides them with a new set of challenges, a new experience, and it makes connections with older players that they may play with in the future again. We also give our kids the opportunity to play down as well. So maybe some of our late developers who maybe require to feel the best player in the team at times, occasionally they will play a down in age group as well to give them a better experience. Yeah. Our player pathway is probably what defines us from other clubs in Scotland at the moment. We don't work on a year-to-year basis, and that's me probably being kind to a lot of programmes. We work in 3 and 4 year cycles. So if we're going to sign a full-time professional right back, as an example, under 18s, we will look at the under 16s, the under 15s, and occasionally we'll look at the under 14s as well, because we want to make sure that we give all the right backs, or the best right back in our system, the very best opportunity to excel, to play up, to play in the under 18s, and ultimately have a clearer pathway to go and achieve their maximum potential as well. So we don't just sign a right back every single year. We might sign a right back once every 2, 3 or 4 years. And it's up to us then to make sure that we're providing that opportunity for that young player to excel and be prepared for under 18s football a lot earlier. We have to define winning. So we have to move away from this mindset of that winning is only about what the score is at the end of a game. Winning can be young players achieving their individual match objectives, which we set for every game, I set with the player for every game. It could be improving something in an individual development plan. It could be achieving a target, whether it's short term or long term. It could be achieving within school. We have to celebrate achievement, and this is why we need to redefine winning. And then lastly, opportunity. And I think we've had 15 academy graduates over the last 18 months have made their competitive debut. Yes, we celebrate that short term, but until that is sustainable success, then we won't stop, and we'll keep pushing the players and keep providing them the level of service and support required. But we have to provide light at the end of the tunnel for these young players, because unfortunately, or fortunately in some cases, this generation of kids want things now. They want to be able to see the end goal. They don't want to be waiting 5, 6, 7 years to develop that or to see that and grasp that. We must make sure that we've given them opportunity short term as well as long term as well. I touched on it there. The biggest issue that we have is the gap between 16 and say 21 years old, where players come out of the part-time academy with a school program, and they're in this black hole where there's little opportunity. How we manage that transition is simple, these 3 different ways. So we have a clear methodology from first team right throughout the club. The terminology is the same, the language is the same, coaching methods are the same. Of course, there's slight differences in stages of development, but to make sure that continuity exists right throughout the academy into the first team, that makes that transition as seamless as possible then. Style of play is very similar, again, particularly with first team 18s, touching on 16s, that'll change at times, depending on the quality of the opposition, the moment of the game, etc., etc. But in essence, there's a lot of our habits are continued from under 11s through to the first team as well. And our culture never changed. I've mentioned ambition, I've mentioned achievement, I've mentioned accountability, and I've mentioned all together as well throughout this presentation. That is our culture right throughout the club. And it's important that these 3 things are always in place and they're constant to facilitate the transition throughout the academy into the first team. We run 2 transition programs. We run a P7 to S1 transition program, which is facilitating the smooth journey from primary school into our full-time school program, where our best young talent attend Baldragon Academy to get an extra 8 to 10 hours of individually tailored practice every single week within the school timetable. We also have another transition program, which is from under 16s to 18s, which is again 1 day a week. And this is to facilitate the transition from the academy into the full-time environment as well. So they can familiarise themselves with their surroundings, with the staff that's there, etc., etc. And it just makes that journey a lot easier when it eventually comes. And then the staffing structure, we have recently just restructured in the summer. A lot of people saying it was a brave move to appoint what was generically known as a couple of academy coaches. So 2 of my staff, Tam Courts, who's now the first team head coach, and Adam Ashgar, who was under 18s coach last year, they've been promoted from the academy into the first team. And this is now cementing our staffing structure where first team staff and academy staff are working together on a daily basis to make sure messaging, processes, styles of play, culture, etc. is all consistent right throughout the club now. So we're not saying it's a seamless transition. There's still going to be a messy middle. There's still going to be challenges. There's still going to be road bumps. Therefore, there's going to be tears and snotters and failure and everything else that comes with the journey. But at least we know. We understand each individual player. We understand what their journey has been like throughout the academy. We understand the service and the support that they've had throughout their journey within the academy. Therefore, each age group understands what their role is in developing that young person and that young player. So to get that consistency right throughout the club is extremely rare. I think Manchester United, Barcelona, Dynamo Zagreb, Midtjylland, Nordsjælland, these clubs, they've absolutely nailed it. They do a fantastic job at that. But it's very rare that you have a Scottish club that can truly say that they have not a seamless transition, but a consistent transition right throughout the club. So Neil mentioned right at the very start about the level you guys are at, where you're coaching just now. And I'd just like to finish off by just sharing a bit of my background. So again, it's easy to say I graduated from university when I was 21, having studied sports coaching and managed to fall into a full-time job. That wasn't the case. I had done over 1,000 hours of voluntary experience working in Scottish hockey, table tennis, badminton, gymnastics, tennis, mini golf, volleyball, as well as football, of course, as well. Those experiences enlightened me to different methods of coaching, working with best practice in different areas of coaching as well, at different levels, whether it's recreational, development, academy, elite level. And I wouldn't I wouldn't have taken that back. I wouldn't change that, because I very much think it's shaped how I see developing young players now as well, and young people. So over 1,000 hours, I hadn't been paid a penny, but I knew that's what I had to do to get ahead of everyone else. Scottish football is renowned for giving ex-professional footballers the jobs. So while they were playing, I had to make sure that I was doing something else and doing something different to make me even better than them, to make sure that I got jobs ahead of them. So from there, I went on to get a full-time job with Hamilton at the time. I ended up working at Rangers. I worked at the Scottish FA. Very fortunate. So I became the youngest Scottish FA performance school coach. I then became the youngest academy director in Scotland. And again, I would never have achieved that if I didn't put myself out there from an early age. So between the ages of 18 and 21, I was constantly out every single night, volunteering in different sports, coaching in different sports, learning from best practice, learning from different people. And that's what got me the opportunity. And that is still what gets me the opportunity just now. So I hope personally that I'm not at Dundee United for the rest of my life, but I want to make sure that I leave whenever that is, 5, 10 years time, whenever that may be, with our club and our academy in a much better place. That's the level of ambition I've got, and it's the level of ambition that we then replicate into our players as well. And that is what I would recommend to you guys as well in your journeys. So we are always, because of my journey, we always want to give young students who are ambitious and want to do a good job the opportunity to develop themselves as well and put what you're learning in your courses into a practical setting. So I'm sure Neil will send this out to you. If there is a thirst or a hunger to get involved, to come and see what we're doing, to come and volunteer, to get additional experiences, to come and learn from our staff, then please reach out to them. They all know that I've put their contact details up here. Please reach out to them, get in touch and put yourself out there. And if it's not with Dundee United, then put yourself out there with active schools, with Scottish hockey, with Scottish volleyball, whoever it may be, to give yourself as many different experiences as possible. And that's the best bit of advice that I was ever given. And I hope that it's good advice for you guys as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. That was excellent. Really interesting to hear about all the work at Dundee United and just how you structure everything. And interesting, there's a few kind of similarities, I guess, with the student coaching network, and that you work on 3 or 4 year cycles. It's exactly what we do in student sport for the most part. What you were saying at the start around the best experience, I think. It is something, the student sport experience is something that stays with you for a long, long time. And we're all, as coaches, trying to support that and make sure that students have that opportunity to have the best possible experience. So there's loads of great things in there. I'm going to just open it up and see if anyone does have any questions for you. Hopefully there's a few that are happy to just come off mic or post a question in the chat. Hopefully there's some. Always takes 1 or 2 just to get going.
I can't answer. Was it Ben? You said was a United fan. I don't know who our signing targets are. I don't know what the team is at the and anything else relating to the first team. But I'll do my best to answer anything else.
I actually did have a question. Not Dundee United related, but see, kind of with things like accreditation, obviously United and the academy have been going for a few of them last few years with UEFA and things like that. How does that change your strategy as a coach or as an academy with the accreditation systems that are out there? Because I'm just thinking a lot of coaches in universities they might have things like governing body accreditation systems or strategies which maybe conflict or don't align exactly with their own beliefs, or maybe they've got staff in the university that want to go in a certain direction with what they do with their clubs, or maybe even players in their squads that are wanting things done in a certain way. So I don't know if there's anything you can maybe cover on that and how that affects what you do and the accreditation systems that are out there.
Yeah, great question, Ben. Great question. Obviously, you can tell you're a United fan with a question like that then. So the first part is, yeah, of course, when I came into the club, we just scraped into Tier 2 of academy football. Within a year we became an elite club. I hate that terminology, to be fair, because there's no elite players in Scotland 16 and down. It's a ridiculous term, but anyway, the top tier of academy football. And of course, to do that, we had to meet certain criteria. Quickly, we had a meeting with the Scottish FA. We didn't believe in the criteria the Scottish FA had set. They were very regimented, and they wanted a structure of having a head of youth phase, a head of children's phase, a head of whatever else it may be. And that didn't facilitate. So a head of children's phase for us is working with 20, 40, 36 players. So it's not really valuable to our model and how we were going to work. But they said as long as we had an equivalent of that, it didn't need to be a head of children's phase, then we would be okay to obviously meet criteria. So we appointed a head of technical performance who looked after the technical development of all our players from the moment they come in to the moment they left the club. And we appointed, obviously, who's the new head coach, Tam Courts, was head of tactical performance, and he was in charge of the game model from 7-a-side, 9-a-side into 11-a-side. Again, they were working with, between them, 70 players, with obviously coaching and support staff around about them as well. And we just felt that was a far greater model to support our methodology, but also the needs and interests of the young kids themselves. So that was probably the first challenge we had to overcome. It wasn't a problem. The Scottish FA were fully supportive of that. They could understand that we were trying to do something different. And the short-term assessment of that is we're starting to see some green shoots. We're starting to see a number of our 2003s coming through. I think out the 12 we signed full-time that year. I think 8 or 9 have made their full debuts already with the first team, and the rest of them have made their debuts with other professional clubs out in loan as well. Now, that's not just myself, that's years and years of hard work behind the scenes before I came to the club. But in terms of the game model, the technical programme, etc., that certainly helped, and it certainly helped accelerate the progress there.
Great. I think Rory was going to come in. Good question.
Yeah, I had a quick question about players playing up and playing down. I thought that was quite interesting. I coach basketball, and we do our age groups in 2 years. So like there's an under 16 league and an under 18 league, and as well as now an under 14 league. Do you have any kind of advice on how to kind of monitor that in terms of where you would probably stop the line between players playing up and playing down, or is that just something you really put out to your coaches to kind of gauge for themselves?
Yeah, firstly, hallelujah, we've got a sport that play dual age bands, because Scotland is a small country. We don't have enough players to have, in football alone, there's 18, 19 academies, and everyone's got 6 or 7 teams. There's just not enough players for any club to call themselves an elite club and give these opportunities to young players. So I love the dual age band model. Again, we're running similar to that, although we do have the 6 or 7 clubs. Age groups, sorry. What we look at is, again, we always go back to stretch against comfort. So we do want our players to perform well, but we understand for them to achieve their full potential, they're going to have to go through periods of adversity, of struggle, of challenges. And it's just monitoring that very closely. So yes, you want to continue to offer them the support throughout that. You want them to have those wee periods where they're maybe not performing well, because ultimately it's that messy middle we're talking about. They might come through that and become a stronger player, but it's just making sure you're not prolonging it too long. And I don't think there's an exact science behind it, Rory. I think it's just you're judging by the eye. You're having frequent individual conversations. You're using their support network, whether it's parents, the school, and you're really getting to know that person and tracking what else is happening around about them to make sure that the performance or the basketball or the football isn't stressing them too much, that they're not going to come through the other end. So it might be a case that you see a player for 5, 6, 7 games, and he's still in that moment of stress, that his performances are dipping. He's starting to get anxious. He's starting to change his identity as a player to play safer and try and get back into his comfort zone. I think as coaches, we then have the responsibility to do the very best for that young kid and put him back into his comfort zone where he can then excel again. And then we can dip him back into that kind of stretch period at a later time again.
That's great. I'll come to Jonathan, and then I'll come to Derek after that.
Yeah, the points about you were saying you go in like a 3 or 4 year cycle in terms of signing players, so you only sign like one position or whatever every couple of years. So it's two questions realistically. How did you get or how do you go about getting the buy-in from top down in the club to be able to miss out potentially on talent? Or is it the case of we can miss out on that one good player for the fact that we're going to develop and nurture an even better player? I think it's good that you're committed to one player for that cycle, instead of you see some clubs and they're hoarding talent and it's kids aren't getting the opportunity. And the second question was, as opposing the same buy-in up and down. So I think in football and in all sport, the first team manager and the one that we see on TV is the main guy, and everyone thinks that he sets the standards for the club. How was the culture then set for you guys? Was that a case of a collaborative effort between all coaching staff, or is it these are things that each of us enjoy and there's a bit of overlap? Or how was the culture set up and down throughout the club? That's two questions. Just answer how you want, really.
Oh, no problem. So the first question, Jonathan, is probably touching a wee bit on my initial point to Rory there as well, is that in Scotland, if every club holds on to 24, 25 players at every age group, then ultimately even the clubs like ourselves or Dundee or also Stuart in at Fife Elite, the quality of those players are less. Whereas if every club only really took the best 12, then that filters back down. So Dundee United's best 12 become better, Fife Elite's best 12 become better, Dundee's best 12 become better as well. So when we first came in, we had high numbers. We had squads of 18 to 24. So unfortunately, within my first few months in the job, we had a massive cut in our numbers because we weren't doing the right thing for the kid. Kids start playing football to play football, not to play 30 minutes of football or 15 minutes of football to go a couple of weekends without any football. So we weren't doing the right thing for the kid. It was just selfish. It wasn't the right thing for them. It wasn't the right thing for Scottish football. So it was better that we focused and developed the players who we genuinely believe can make it and become a professional footballer. Now, that may change year to year. It may change just before they sign under 18s. But again, the decision or the focus on the decision or the catalyst for the decision remains the same. We're going to do what's best for you. So we can sign you in a full-time contract. We can keep you for 2 years. Ultimately, we don't think that you're going to play first-team football here. But what we're better doing at that point then is having that honest conversation and say, listen, you might not going to make it here, but you've got this, this, and this. We believe you've got a better opportunity and a better pathway elsewhere, and we'll help them with that transition across to another club. And people say, oh, that'll come back and bite you on the bum. It doesn't. Like, we've done the best thing for that kid. And I think if we always go back to my first point, is you look after the person first, show the person that you care first, and they'll buy into anything else that you say. The second point in terms of the culture, we operate with a sporting director at the club. And it's very much a collaborative approach. The academy has clearly had a lot of investment, a lot of resource, and it's been a big driver throughout the full club. So even in the business side of the club as well, through commercial and finance and market and media and so on as well. So the academy's played a massive part in developing that culture, led through myself, the sporting director, and obviously now we're getting the fruits of our labour now that we have 2 academy staff in with the first team who can continue and build that culture in the first team environment now as well. But as well as that, we have an analyst that came from the academies up with the first team as well. And on the new head of tactical role that replaced Tam now sits within the first team environment. So again, it comes back to that consistency, clarity and coherence right throughout the club. And again, hopefully with academy staff now being in there, you'll see that becoming stronger and stronger.
Yeah, it's good to hear the culture coming from the bottom up instead of the top down. And then like football, you know what I mean, manager the last 18 months and the culture changes again instead of having a consistent basis. Yeah, no, it's nice to hear him. I hope more sports take that up. And I don't think too many in Scotland do.
Yeah, hope so. Listen, we still need to win games, Jonathan, so we can have all the culture and the playing style and the players and the pathway and the opportunity. ultimately at the end of the day, you alluded to it, the first team manager, the head coach has to win games, or nobody really cares about what the culture of the club is at that point. But we hope that all the hard work that's went on behind the scenes ultimately is going to help us get those results that we require. Good question, thank you.
Probably got time for one last question. Derek, do you want to ask yours?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Andy, you kindly give us a really good description of how you brought the youngsters through into the academy and hopefully up to the first team. I'm kind of interested in the other end, in a way, because once a lot of players finish, they kind of want to move into the coaching side. And what kind of opportunities do they get to kind of broaden their experience and broaden their understanding? If they've been, from coaching context, do they get a chance to work with outside bodies? Because universities are always short of good coaches, but also offer a fairly unique set of experiences, but they're kind of difficult to fit within the kind of standard league club program. Is that an opportunity for those players who are reaching either through injury or age the end of their playing career to try and change and offer a broader perspective outside, and also gain some more experience and understanding from a very big bunch of articulate, intelligent and kind of really committed players who like to go out and have that good experience, as you've alluded to as well?
Yeah, Derek, listen, it's a great point, and it's one thing we definitely have to get better at. We want to have the first team players, and particularly integrated within the academy system, so they're passing on their knowledge, their expertise, etc. as well. But I think even if we flip that and use it from an early age, we want to help, and I mentioned it in the presentation, we want to help our young players develop a plan B regardless anyway. So a couple of the things that we have done, and again, this is by no means perfect. We've just appointed somebody that's going to be looking after this aspect, but we allow all our first year professional footballers to continue to do their higher education, whether that's at school or whether that's at university or college. We've had some great success. Lewis Nielsen changed position, achieved 5 higher A's, and made his first team debut all within 12 months. As an example, we don't have a Lewis Nielsen every single year, unfortunately, or we would be pushing that out in media constantly. But the vast majority of our players choose the option to stay on at school and combine their studies with being a full-time professional footballer, because we want that, because the professional career could finish in 1 or 2 years, and it could be a very short-lived. So we want to make sure that they're prepared for the next step in their journey if Plan A doesn't materialise. In terms of the first team players, it's a similar culture. We've had Mark Reynolds, who's went on to get an engineering degree, and again, it's about adapting his programme and modifying his programme to allow him to study around his training commitments within the club as well. But it's something we certainly have to get better at. It's something that we're willing to listen to ideas, because we have one player there in the summer who still doesn't have a clue really what he wants to do. He's left the club and he's now probably in that kind of wilderness period just now. He's not really ever thought about Plan B. He's paid lip service to it when we've been working with him, and we feel responsible for that. If we're going to promote accountability for our players, then we need to take accountability for that young player doesn't have something that he can just slipstream into at this moment in time. So 100% we have to get better at it.
Yeah, good to hear that they're being supported through their education as well, and that kind of dual career pathway, which we're all very aware of. We've come to the end of the session. Thanks, Andy, for your time. That's been really interesting, and thanks for answering the questions. And I guess wish you luck for the rest of the season. Not this weekend. I'm a Hearts fan, so I'm going to put that in there, but that's all good. The rest of the season's fine. And Sarah, thanks for your time as well. Clean sports is always so important, and not something necessarily gets educated too much at this kind of level. So thank you for your time and joining us today. And thanks to everyone for your contributions and for taking the time to be a part of this session. We've got a number of sessions planned throughout the year that we hope can help develop you as people and coaches. We'll be in touch about that over the course of the year. The next one we've got planned is for middle of October, and it's around concussion and mental health. So really vital subjects to learn more about. But that's us for this evening. We'll be in touch about next sessions, and we'll be able to share links to the video and the slides. And if you've got any other questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out and get in touch with us, and we'll be able to help you as much as we can. But until then, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice to meet everybody.